I'm going to get started with them. I have a married friend that has a 16-and-a-half-year-old that has a few things going on. I'm not sure how to advise him. The 16-and-a-half-year-old is a vegetarian and doesn't eat enough protein. He also doesn't sleep enough, so that his serotonin and adrenal levels are low. I'm not sure how he knows that, and is very, very tired and can't get out of bed in the morning. Notice these sound like excuses. Serotonin and adrenal levels are low. Really, the kid just isn't sleeping enough. And the parents have tried not to bug him, but then they rescue him by calling the school and taking him in late. They haven't let him fail, but I suggested that they let him fail and stay out of the drama, rushing around in the morning while he's being late. But his medical condition is of concern, so that is where they run into problems. Yeah, see, the kid is 16 and a half. I mean, goodness. By 16 and a half, you know, I was done with high, and everybody's different, but, you know, by 16 and a half in the old days, people had moved out, they were married, and they were clearing forest. I'm not making this up. In the old days, they were clearing forest and having kids, the pioneers were, and building log cabins. So, you know, here we are with 16-and-a-half-year-olds, and we're getting them out of bed, and we're calling the school and saying, my 16-and-a-half-year-old emotionally crippled child is going to be late for school. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's pathetic what we're doing to our kids by rescuing them. So rather than fuss and rescue, we need to be going right back to the basics, not making this complicated. We need to love and teach. You don't get all fussy. There's no yelling and screaming, but there's also no rescuing. So you love the kid and simultaneously you teach the kid. There are, as far as the vegetarian thing, if the kid wants to be a vegetarian, oh, okay. But then you sit down with the kid, and if the kid's not getting enough protein in your opinion, then you sit down with the kid and you show him vegetarian cookbooks. It's not about the amount of protein, it's about the right amount of what are called essential amino acids. There are proteins that a body can manufacture. There are amino acids that proteins are made up of building blocks called amino acids, and the body can take proteins, break them down, and make other proteins by taking these building blocks and make other proteins. But there are certain amino acids that it has to be supplied. It can't make those. And those are the ones that are called essential amino acids. And so there are certain ones that it has to be given. It can't make those up. And there's a list of those, and there aren't very many of them. But that's what the books will teach you. And that's why, for the longest time, it was thought that you had to have things like meat and milk. Well, it turns out you don't. That you can supply those essential amino acids with certain combinations of things like certain beans and corn, and the vegetarian books can teach you those things. I don't know all that stuff, and I don't care, because I eat little bits. I'm not a big meat eater, but I eat enough of all those other stuff that I don't need to know that stuff. But they'll tell you which combinations of beans and corn and all that stuff will give you the right combinations of amino acids. The parents need to see to it that the kid at least knows how to learn that stuff, and then leave it up to the kid to learn that stuff. And if he wants to make himself sick, then yeah, okay, then the kid may have to get sick. And if the kid proves that he can't handle it on his own, then they may have to take over. But at this point, they just need to see to it that the kid knows how to get the knowledge to learn how to handle his own diet. As far as sleep, then they're crazy to run around in the morning and call the school. Are you kidding? For a 16-and-a-half-year-old, there's no reason to be getting him up in the morning. They make sure he has an alarm clock, and then it's like boring. If the kid doesn't get up on time, then they go, gee, too bad, huh? With our kids, from the time they were 8 years old, what we told them was, on your 8th birthday, here's an alarm clock. Hallelujah, you're now a big kid, and you get yourself up from now on. And if you showed up in the kitchen past the time that we were supposed to take you, or the bus was supposed to pick you up, well then, gee, too bad. You walk. Or you use your own money to get a taxi. And a kid pays for a taxi to school one time, and they discover how expensive that is, and then they figure it out after that, and they get up on their own. And that's what this kid will figure out. So let's say that a kid refuses to pay for a taxi to school. Oh, that's really easy. If you don't go to school, then you get 0 privileges. You don't get any computer. You don't get any music. You don't get any video games. You don't get any. You do what's called ramping up the consequences. So if you want to play that game, well, no problem. Then you don't get any running water. You don't get the use of the bathroom in the house. After a while, then you get to transfer to what's called the youth detention center in the community. It's really easy, but you don't get excited about it. You just tell the kid it's your job to get to school. And if the kid misses school enough, then the consequences get really severe. You explain to a kid that there are just natural consequences for missing school. And up to a certain age, a kid is required to be at school. So these parents are running around and they are suffering the consequences for the kid missing school. Well, how dumb is that? If the kid wants to miss school, then he's the one that has to suffer the consequences for it, not the parents. The parents are they're really being rather foolish because they're paying the price for the kid's dumb choices. John's listing the essential amino acids for us right here. They're easy to look up. And then it's also easy to look up which vegetables have them. So this is easy stuff. Somebody says, you say that real love is loving with no expectations. I find that if I have no expectations, especially with my children, I get no results. Can you elaborate on this philosophy? Do you really mean that real love is loving without unrealistic expectations? No, I mean just what I say. The first thing I would recommend, obviously, is read the Real Love and Parenting book. Parents want a really short, cute little answer to parenting, and it isn't a short, cute little answer. Read the whole book. It will save your life and your kid's life. I mean that. Read the whole thing. What I'm saying is there are no expectations connected to the love, but there are a lot of expectations connected to teaching children responsibility. So, real love means that I care about your happiness without any expectations of what you're going to give me in return. So if you're my child, I'm going to love you, period. No matter what you do. No expectations. In the process of teaching you how to be a responsible person, however, well, there are lots of expectations about teaching you responsibility. You're going to learn to clean your room. You don't have to clean your room for me to love you, but in order for you to learn to become a responsible human being, Yeah, you are going to learn to clean your room. That's how you learn to be responsible. You are going to do your homework. You are going to go out and pull weeds in the yard. In our house, you're going to go out and chop wood. You're going to go out and dig ditches. In our house, it wasn't. In some houses, I laugh when kids say to me, "It's not fair. In my house, I have to empty the garbage." They picked the wrong person to complain to. Because I tell them, you're right, it's not fair that you have to empty the garbage because you're getting far too little to do. In our house, you'd have to plow the garden and take care of it and weed it and chop the wood and help build the bridges, and you'd have a million things to do. You'd have to do the laundry, and you'd have to, so the fact that all you have to do is empty the garbage, you're right, it is unfair. You have far too light a burden. So there are huge expectations associated with being a responsible human being. Being part of a family requires a lot of work, which is what we explain to our children. Having lights, for example, having a dry roof over your head requires somebody to work. It requires me to work. Having clean floors, having food in your dish, all of these things require work. And you guys are going to participate in some of that work, like emptying the garbage, cleaning the dishes, getting the dishes from the table to the sink, and so on, and so on. We divided all the jobs up, and everybody got jobs. So there are expectations associated with responsibility, but there are no expectations associated with you getting loved. So, see the difference? Huge difference. Then, if a child, let's say, doesn't fulfill their expectations associated with doing their job, then there's no disappointment or anger. Then there's just more loving and teaching. So, again, read the book Real Love and Parenting. That will make it way clearer. Although that's a fair bit of the explanation right there. Here's somebody who says, my son decided to get drunk on his 16th birthday. He got picked up by the police. When we called, we told the detective, who was a friend of ours, to let our son sit in jail. He got mouthy with the judge and ended up in jail for 3 days, which I think is a wonderful idea. I've been called by parents on a number of occasions who said to me, our son is in jail and he called us to bail him out. What should we do? Leave him in jail. You're not the one who made the decision to do whatever it was that he did. Now, I mean, if it's a matter of leaving somebody in jail for, 20 years before their trial date, I probably wouldn't do that. But, if the kid's going to sit in jail for several days and learn the consequences of his behavior, leave him there. You didn't make the foolish decision, and he needs to learn the consequences of making a foolish decision, because the idea of consequences are to teach somebody that the next time they go to make a decision like that, they're going to think, that probably wasn't a really great decision, because that wouldn't be a good decision, because the last time I did this, I really didn't like it. That's why they give people tickets, is so that the next time they speed, for example, people will think, nah, it wasn't worth $150. That's the point. Somebody says, can you give me some added advice on how, I think not who, how being unconditionally loving to myself would look like? I still find that I get afraid if I'm being too selfish by taking time to say what I want and need. I would suggest that you go to the archives of the daily coaching videos. And if you go to the archives, then click on the daily coaching videos. There are 3 different kinds of archives. And go to week 10, and then go to Wednesday through Friday. So there are 3 segments, week 10, Wednesday through Friday. And those 3 segments talk about loving ourselves, because we really don't. Love is an abundant flow that we share with other people and other people share with us. And loving ourselves really just isn't all that productive. So we can be patient with ourselves. We can lose our self-hatred. But loving ourselves just isn't that helpful. And people have come to talk about loving themselves because they have found it so unproductive to go and find love from other people, which is one of the reasons that we talk about finding real love from other people, is that it is possible to find unconditional love. So the more we talk about real love, and the more we tell the truth about ourselves and find the conditional love from other people, the easier that you're going to find it to find unconditional love from others, and you won't need to look for this self-love, which is really an illusion. Now, separate subject, which is you find that you get afraid of looking selfish by taking time to say what you want and need. Well, that's not necessarily selfish. And sometimes people have made us feel like we're selfish for asking for what we want because it interferes with what they want. And so people in our lives have said, well, how dare you ask for what you want? But that's only because they're so busy filling their own needs. There's nothing wrong with asking clearly for what you want. In fact, one of the reasons that we've been afraid to ask for what we want is because other people have made us feel bad. The only mistake we make is when we ask for what we want, then people tell us no, and we become disappointed or irritated. Where we make our mistake is asking for what we want from any particular person and demanding that we get it from that person. So let's say, for example, that I want time or attention. I want affection. I want to be accepted. I want to be loved. Nothing wrong with that, but I don't have the right to demand it from you. So, is it okay that I want to be loved and accepted? Yeah. Is it okay that I want people to like me or spend time with me or love me or care about me? Yeah, that's okay. But when I insist that you stop what you're doing and that you give it to me, that's not okay. And it's not okay that I get all disappointed and irritated and annoyed when you say no. In real love, what I do is I may come to you on the phone or in person and say, do you have time to spend with me? Here's the truth about me. Do you have the capability of loving and accepting me? And when you say no, in real love, I say, not a problem. I move on to somebody else and see if they have the time, energy, and capability of loving me. If they don't, I keep moving on to the next person. And if I do that honestly, not demanding or expecting love from anybody, I will find somebody who can love me. I will. Where people screw up is demanding it from any one person. And boy, they do that a lot. We've all done it. I've done it. We've all done that. Then what we do is, because we demand it from one person, and then that person doesn't give it to us, we go, well, see, I'm never going to get it. And then we stop. Well, how stupid is that? Now the whole search is over and we're screwed. Now it's finished. Now we're never going to find it. We have to be willing to keep asking. I hear that a lot. People tell me, well, I tried. Well, you didn't keep trying until you got what you needed. Well, I called 2 people. What's the present population of the planet? It's more than 2, I think. But people try twice, and then they get irritated, and then they're done. Lynn says, forgiving others is easier than forgiving ourselves. Doesn't loving ourselves make it possible for us to forgive our own mistakes and then move on? Otherwise, we become mired in the weight of our pasts, and aren't we able to accept being loved? Now, it's really important to get over our past mistakes, but that's not the same as loving ourselves. If we simply understand our past mistakes, if we simply understand that making mistakes is an indispensable part of loving, getting over them becomes easy. But forgiving ourselves and getting over our past mistakes is a different thing than stopping and loving ourselves. I suggest that you go and read those 3 video mails, or watch those 3 video mails that I suggested. This whole business of loving ourselves has become such a holy grail to people. Well, we have to love ourselves first. Impossible. I suggest you go watch them. But if you're starving to death and you've never been unconditionally loved yourself, ever, how are you going to give yourself something that you've never gotten before? How do you give yourself something you've never received? And it's so frustrating to people to hear from well-meaning self-help people, well, just love yourself. With what? With what? Where would I get it? You're starving to death in the middle of the desert, and somebody comes along and says to you, well, just feed yourself. With what? It's so refreshing to finally hear you don't have to do that. You don't have to love yourself. You don't have to dig a well in the middle of the desert and find water. It turns out it's already around you in an infinite, never-ending river. All you have to do is tell the truth about yourself. You don't have to love yourself. That's too hard. Here's the reason you don't have to love yourself, is that it's too hard. It turns out finding love is easier than that. What I'm suggesting is easier. Love is everywhere around you. Rather than digging a well and loving yourself, all you have to do is put your hand out and reach out for the river of real love that's already there. And people will love you. And as you feel loved, and you reach out for this river and divert the real love to yourself from these people, and as you pass it on to other people and the river flows through you, the river magnifies as you pass it on to others. It becomes bigger. You pass it on to others, and they pass it on to yet others, and what you get as a result of feeling loved and passing it on to others is, the end result of feeling loved and loving others is happy. At no point in all these years, as a result of my feeling loved and loving others, have I ever stopped to love myself. There's never been a reason to. There's never been a need. And with experienced people in real love, I've never run into anybody who's ever felt that need either. But they've been happy. That's the cool thing. There's just no place for it. Let's see. Okay, this is a little long, but this is from the internet. It was an article that was sent to a coach, and it was about a sex education class. A 60-year-old lady who was a graduate of a marriage class. She succeeded in getting hitched at the end of the class to her 5th husband. When she joined the class, she was dating a new man who seemed promisingly generous. She said, "The best thing I learned was never to refuse him anything in bed. It worked. Not only did he marry her," she says, "but he began lavishing her with expensive gifts. He gave me a new car and a plasma TV for my birthday. Lucky her." Married women are flocking to this class for help in holding on to their husbands, the ones they already have. "After 9 years of marriage, my husband had stopped noticing me," said Olga Rosnina. This is a marriage class in Russia. A statuesque, red-headed real estate agent. She joined this sex class, How to Bring Back Your Honeymoon course, which involved advanced sex tips as well as advice on how to spice up daily life. "Before, I wore jeans and flats, so I bought mini skirts, high heels, and lipsticks. Combined with her new bedroom skills, the effect on her husband was instant. He's much warmer and less uptight," she says, "and most important, of course, he gives me whatever I ask for." And then the article gave a graphic description of these sexual exercises that they were teaching these women. I mean, really graphic description, which I really didn't care to go into. And this other lady from Russia said that she credits the program with saving her rocky marriage. She said, "I'm sure that my husband would have left me if I hadn't done these exercises," that she then gave a graphic description of. She said, "Sex is 90% of a relationship for a man." And she said that she gave the gift of these exercises in this program to her daughter, her 15-year-old daughter. She's a pretty girl, she said, but there's a lot of competition out there. Somebody asked her if that wasn't just, a little bit too young. She said, "Oh, no, not at all." And the girl said, "Thanks to my mom, I'm very confident with boys already. I always get what I want from the boys," the 15-year-old girl. A lady wrote to this coach who sent me the article and said, was talking about how do I compete with this? Because she was talking about how the men in her life essentially want just this. And the coach wrote back and said, "There are many stories about Nancy Astor, the first woman elected to Britain's parliament. A vivacious, fearless American woman, she married into the English aristocracy, and during the 1930s and 40s, became a bright light on the English social and political scenes. One story about Lady Astor is that she and Winston Churchill, and we know who he is, were sitting in a pub having a discussion about morality. Churchill suggested that as an experiment, Lady Astor ponder the following question. If a man were to promise her a huge amount of money, say £1 million, for the privilege, would she sleep with him? Lady Astor pondered the question and finally said, yeah, she probably would. Churchill then said if she would sleep with him for £5. Her response was sharp. Of course not. What do you think I am, a prostitute? This time, Churchill won the battle of wits by saying, we've already established that fact. Now we're just negotiating about price. The point being that once you've stepped onto the field of death, you're dead. Once we've stepped onto the field of death, it's just about negotiating for price. And the article about the marriage class in Russia was describing how these women were being taught to get on the field of death, even with their husbands in some cases, with men who are not their husbands in other cases, and they were being taught to sell themselves very well and to get what they wanted with great skill. And these women were thrilled. I mean, in the article, these women were ecstatic. Of course, they were being interviewed at what period of time after they'd taken the course? Days, weeks, maybe a month or two after they'd taken the course. Actually, all the women that I read about were being interviewed weeks or less after the course. And of course they were happy, because in the initial stages of exchanging imitation love, everybody is just happy as they can be. But then it always wears off, and everything comes crashing down. I mean, you'd think that lady who was on her 5th marriage would have figured that out by now, but she hadn't. She simply learned another tool to use on the field of death, and so she was just only too eager to go out there and use it. Well, how long do you think this is going to last? 6 weeks, 8 weeks, maybe 6 months, and she'll be done, and then she'll be looking for something else. And it's true with every form of imitation love. And then everybody's surprised when they're cooked and dead. Bit sad, and predictable as can be. Let's see. Nice example. Appreciate somebody sending that. Here somebody says, the guy I was working with to redesign my web page kept lying to me, and he kept missing the deadline. We have a fair bit of experience with people missing deadlines. He continued to say the project was complete when he hadn't even started it. People love to do that because they don't want to disappoint you. They don't want to lose your approval. And so in order to not lose your approval, what they do is lie. Oh, well, I'm almost done. But they haven't even started. This went on for 2 months. Oh, that's short. We've had people do that for much longer. I finally decided to hire someone else, but I'm still perplexed about the lying. Oh, surely you're not perplexed. During the time he was supposedly working on the project, I offered to help several times. Although I now have someone who will do the project, I still feel mystified by the first guy not telling the truth. How could I have handled it better? Yes, I have made this mistake, Barb, many times. I've gotten much faster about holding people accountable. And that's the key, is accountability. When somebody tells you, this is what I'm going to do, I'm just getting much faster about saying to people, fine, I want to see what you've done. The mistakes that I make now, the only time I make this mistake now is with people who are friends. And that's where I screw it up. Although now I'm making that mistake much less often. But the whole reason people lie to you is they don't want to lose your approval. And so what they'll say to you is, oh, yes, I'm working on that. I almost have that done. And they'll tell you that even if they've done absolutely nothing, because they don't want to say these words to you. I haven't done it. Because then that makes them either a liar, a cheater, or incompetent. And nobody wants to say that, because we've all learned that if we're those things, then we're not acceptable and people will like us less. And we hate that. And so we'd rather lie. It's right back to the old thing that we did when we were 3 years old and Mom said, who broke this? I don't know. And so here's this guy who's, 40 years old or 30 or 50 or whatever, and he's still doing what he did when he was 3. So it's not perplexing. So what we have to do is hold people absolutely, strictly accountable. And so now what I do with people is I say, so what are you going to do? And you're going to have it done by what date? And if you don't have it done by what date, what are we going to do? And if you don't have it done by, what will the consequences be? I had a publicist that said, I'm going to do this and this for you. And if it doesn't produce results, and I didn't pay her. We said we would pay her X dollars, and she said, we will have these results, and I will do these grand things. And I said, well, great, but I expect results. Your promises of great things don't mean anything to me. So if you don't, then you don't get paid. We always do. I'm not interested in your promises. I've had people say that I'm going to do this, or for example, people would say, I'm going to do this event. And I would say, fine. Then if you're going to do this event that involves 200 steps in this period of time, I will judge you according to whether you can do 10% of it in this amount of time. And so by that amount of time, if they hadn't done 10% of the job, then I would say, then what I judge is you can't do the whole event at all. And then I cancel the event. And then they say, no, I'll catch up. No, you've already proven to me that you can't do the event. And then I cancel the event. And then people get angry at me. And they say, well, no, I already told you that that's what I would do. And so I just cancel things faster. I change the job. I hire somebody else. You just hold people accountable, but you don't get mad at them. You just do it. I had one long-term friend of 20 plus years who we had an event all set up and scheduled and the whole thing, and by a certain date he hadn't done anything he said he was going to do, and we canceled it, and he was absolutely furious. Called, wrote, threatened, screamed, cursed, and I said, well, I'm not mad at you, but you didn't do it. And I can't have a dream that you're going to do it. So you just hold people accountable. John says, you just might make a good project manager. Yeah, maybe. It's either done or it ain't. My dad died, new question, on Tuesday morning, and my sister and mother were at his bedside at home at my parents' house. My sister called me at work to let me know. I knew that once my dad could no longer smoke cigarettes, that he would go pretty fast. My mom took his cigarettes away when the hospital bed came last Friday. He'd been suffering with terminal prostate cancer for over a year at home. My sister is close to my mom in proximity and relationship-wise. They are allies, and I often feel a lot of expectations and resentments from both of them. So we got dad in the hospital bed and mom and sister close to dad. When I got the call, I spoke to my mom and asked her if she needed or wanted me to come up. She said, no, you and Dan, my husband, were planning on coming up Sunday, so I'll see you then. I felt I'd said my goodbyes to Dad, and it was my choice not to be there after he died or even right before. So I was glad my sister was there to help my mom. So Dad died, and she was there, and she wasn't there with him when he died. My mom asked me to make some calls for her to let people know, and I asked my sister to fax the list to me, and I left work, and I don't have a fax at home, so she faxed it to my cousin, and I went over to the cousin's house to get the list, but there was no mention of my name on the fax, just a hello to my cousin, and my sister continued to contact my cousin. This is a long, long email. The bottom line is she wasn't there when her dad died, and so the mom and the sister punished her for not being there, even though they told her not to come. They punished her. They kind of left her out of the loop. They made her feel bad. Now she's being ignored. She wants to be included in the services. They got upset at her. The mom and the sister, were crying and making her feel bad. They both called and left voicemails and made her feel guilty for not being there. Now she continues. I told my sister when she called that I felt judged by her. She said a lot of people would judge me for not being there. Gee. She told me that she didn't care that I didn't come up, but that she's worried about how I'll feel down the road, hear all the guilt. It just went on and on and on. Honey, this happens all the time. You have to make a choice about where you're going to be and what you're going to do. So you'd gone up and you'd said your goodbyes to your dad and what you were going to do, and you don't live up near where your dad is. Your mom and your sister do. They made a decision about how they were going to handle his death. You weren't there. How they were going to handle the phone calls and all of that, they decided to leave you out of a lot of it to punish you. They were not loving toward you. So what? Your problem is really simple. You still expect your mother and your sister to love you unconditionally. Now pay attention here, sweetie, and this will make life really simple for you. They don't love you unconditionally. They don't. We do this to ourselves all the time. We say this. We say, my mother loves me, but then she acts like this. No, everything comes together, everything meshes when we finally say this. My mother doesn't love me. She doesn't. She uses you. Just like you said right in the beginning. You said this really beautifully. You said, I knew that once my dad could no longer smoke cigarettes, that he would go pretty fast because my mom took his cigarettes away when the hospital bed came last Friday. What in the world is your mother doing taking his cigarettes from him when he's in the terminal stages of prostate cancer? The man's about to die. And one of his sole pleasures in life is smoking, and she takes his cigarettes from him? Is that a loving thing to do? No. She should be taken out back and whipped with a horse whip. I'm exaggerating. But good grief, she controls people. She doesn't think about them. She uses them. She was mean to him. She wasn't thinking of his welfare. He's about to die. What's he going to do? Get addicted to cigarettes? And she does the same thing to you. So, she doesn't love you. The whole reason this thing bothers you is that you expect her to love you. If the mailman didn't include you in the funeral preparations for his father, would that have bothered you? No, because you don't know the mailman well. Well, this only bothers you because it's your mother, and you expect her to love you. Quit it. She doesn't. Neither does your sister. So, let them do what they do. Just leave them alone. Go to the funeral. Let them have all of their fuss. Let them be in control. Let them do the whole drama, because your father's dead. Love him in your way. It'll turn out that the whole funeral is so that the entire world can pay attention to your mother and your sister. The funeral will be for them. So let them have their play, let them have their drama, and you love him in your own way. Let them go. Let them do their thing. And you go find some people to unconditionally love you. And don't let it be them. Find some real love people. Find some people who understand the principles of real love. Go on the teleconference calls that are on the website and tell people how you feel. Tell them how you miss your dad. Talk about that. Find some people to love you in real time. Talk about his death. Talk about the times that you had with him. Talk about some times that you wish you'd had with him. Talk about that. Grieve. But don't look to those two. They're, frankly, at the time of your dad's death, aren't they kind of irrelevant? Don't let them distract you, sweetie. And when I say go out and horsewhip your mom, I don't mean that in a malignant way. I just mean comparatively speaking. She's just irrelevant. I don't want to get letters about horsewhipping anybody. Actually, you can send the letters if you'd like. Let's see. Here's a man who says, I seem to meet ladies who eventually say, I'm not looking for a relationship. So he dates women who eventually then say, well, I'm not really looking for a relationship. But I am looking for a relationship. There's one particular lady who has said that phrase to me. We have a great rapport and many common interests, and we do enjoy each other's company. I'm thinking of seeing her and doing things as friends in the hope that she may eventually see me as a boyfriend. What are your thoughts on this? Also, a few of my male friends like to ask women out just as friends, also in the hope that more will come later. Well, see, that's dishonest, right from the beginning. I mean, if you're looking for more in a relationship, but you start off the relationship and you don't tell them that, I mean, shoot, it's a lie. So you could do that if you want to, but it's dishonest. And you're spending a whole lot of time and energy putting time and energy into something where you have expectations that aren't spoken. So, whoa, what an expensive and dishonest and wasteful way to spend your time. Much better to tell people what you want right off. Much better to go on the internet, for example, and put in your profile, this is what I want. I'm looking for this kind of relationship. I'm looking to tell the truth about myself right off. I know people in their profiles who say, I'm reading a book called Real Love. I'm reading a book called Real Love and Dating. I want to tell the truth about myself right off. I'm looking for unconditional love. I'm not looking to distract my relationship with sex right in the beginning. I'm not. I'm looking for honesty. I'm looking for the real thing. Why would you want to waste your life playing games with people in the beginning? To me, that's nuts. You can do that if you want, but to me, that would be insanity. I think we're going to have time for some live questions, so you can do that. You can ask some if you want to. John says, that statement about my mother does not love me is a very, very big hurdle for some people to get over. I know some people who have rejected real love because they could not see that their parents did not really love them or that they do not love their children. Yeah, you think? I mean, I was talking to a lady one day who was just angry and bitter and controlling of her children. Her children just hated being in the same room as her. They hated every minute of being with her. And as I was talking to her, she was just a martinet. She was just angry. Her husband hated talking. Everybody that was around her hated being with her. And so I said to her, so what was it like being around your parents? And she said, this was just recently. She said, oh, they were very kind. They were very loving. I said, so they weren't critical? No, they never spoke an ill word of anyone. And I'm thinking, this is impossible. So I said, so when you made mistakes, what did they do? And she said, oh, they were sweet and supportive. And I'm going, this cannot be. So I said, okay. So when you made mistakes, they didn't ever they weren't disappointed. They didn't sigh. They weren't exasperated. No, never. All right. Well, good. I said that's wonderful. I'm really tickled for you. So I stopped talking to her and I I brought her husband in without her. And I said, so what, tell me, what are your wife's parents like? And he said, you can't believe it. They never stop criticizing people. From the minute that they get up in the morning until they go to bed at night, all they do is moan and complain about everybody. Everything is wrong. I mean, the mail is delivered wrong. The sun rises wrong. It sets wrong. Everybody's wrong. I said, I'll be darned. This lady literally doesn't see it. She just has to defend her parents. They are right. And apparently it's an extension of the fact that she is always right. She's never wrong about anything, ever. And because they're an extension of her, then they are always right too. She's always kind and supportive and sweet and wonderful. And so apparently they have to be sweet and kind and wonderful too. So she really doesn't see it. It really took quite a while to get her to see it. As she was interacting with her children, for example, and I wasn't in the room, there were a couple of times that she just cut them up. I mean, she was vicious. And I would enter the room and stop her and say, that is what I'm talking about. And so I would mimic her and say, what you just did was this. And I would say, so is that loving? This, what I just did. And get her to the point where there was no way she could deny it. And I would say, and you do that all the time. It was like pulling molars out of her jaw to get her to see how unloving she was. So yeah, John, what you're saying is right. It's just very difficult to get people to the point where they can see what they do. If they've been doing it long enough, it becomes like the air they breathe, and they can't see it in their parents either, some of them. Being right is tough. Let's see. Pam from Washington. I'm trying to figure out how to be friends with my ex-boyfriend, who I still have feelings about. He's dating someone else, which complicates things. But we've known each other for years, and it's painful not to talk to him. We've talked every day for over 2 years, and the last week has been terrible. Working hard not to be angry, and I know I'm clinging. I want to get love from him, which he can't give. I have real love friends who help, but I'm struggling with not picking up the phone and or communicating by way of email. Well, if he's dating somebody else, this is pretty easy. You absolutely have to get love from some other place, because to communicate with him while he's dating somebody else is dishonest and disloyal. So, I mean, it's just wrong. So you got to tell him that every time he talks to you, this gets really easy. Every time he talks to you, he has to tell his girlfriend that he has spoken to you, and he has to tell her what he said to you. So that's going to either lead to his stopping talking to you or to his breaking up with his girlfriend. One of those two things is going to happen. You know, I'm not telling you that he can't speak to you. He can do whatever he wants to. But he's at least got to be honest about it. You can't make somebody stop doing something. But he's got to tell her that he's speaking to you. And one of those two things is going to happen. And then you need to get all the love you can from the teleconferences, from talking to real love people, so you feel loved enough that you don't feel like you have to get it from him. That's the key. And let me remind all of you who are here that we've got on the 19th and 20th of April, we've got a conference coming up in Atlanta, a live conference that I'll be teaching for 2 days solid. It's going to be all day, both days. And I highly recommend that you attend, and if possible, bring friends, because wherever you are, if you bring people with you, and you bring somebody with you, and you simultaneously learn how to receive and give real love, you'll have somebody with whom you'll have an instant group wherever you live. So strongly recommend that you come to the group. And Pam, if you have any more questions about this, let me know, and bring this up with people that you talk on the teleconference with, because it's really important that you be honest with your boyfriend, and that he be honest with his present girlfriend. Really important. I'm not emphasizing that you stop anything. The big emphasis is the being honest about it. So I look forward to meeting you in Atlanta. So it's been a real tickle talking to you guys. We only got like a minute left, so I don't really have time to do a new question. But look forward to seeing you in Atlanta on the 19th and 20th of April. And send in your questions. Those are just like wonderful. We all learn. Anytime anybody asks a question, we all learn from talking about the issue that you send in ahead of time. And in the meantime, in the next week till we talk to you next Tuesday, we love you tons. Thanks for coming. It's been a real pleasure. We'll see you then.